I finished.
I'm on that call. Yeah.
I finished.
Good.
Actually, I was waiting for it all the time. It was good. I went out looking crazy.
No, you too.
That's the same dress you have on.
Shh.
Yes.
Hey, oh my God. Where did you get the link that you went on to? The email I just sent to everyone?
The one that you just sent like an hour ago. So when I went back to the one that you sent yesterday, that one went to, I guess, the one that we are in now.
Yeah.
The last link that was sent, that's the
I
one
resent it to the whole group. Oh, yeah. My bad.
Technical difficulties.
This is why I like to start early in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
So I resent the proper link to the entire group who RSVP'd and apologized. So you saw that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And when you got on now in the weight room, did it say Latinas in medical school will start?
Yeah, it just had me like re-input my information, like as if I'm registering again. So it said like name, email, and then join the meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Hold on. Hello.
This is an urgent message for the vehicle owner.
They keep sending me stuff to like renew.
Yeah.
I don't know what warranty on my car, and I'm like, I don't need that.
I think it's spam because I get the exact same calls.
Yeah, it's crazy. And how are you? How's med school treating you?
Oh, it's been a wild ride, but I'm still here. It's actually been fun though these past couple months because I've been out of the classroom and in the hospital seeing patients, so I like it a lot better.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. But yeah.
Comes Norma.
Oh.
She works for the Association of American Medical Colleges.
Oh, okay. So she works for the big dogs, AMAC.
Oh, is that what they are?
Yes.
That's funny. I'm going to tell her you call them the big dogs. Hilarious. So people are starting to come in. So hopefully by 6 o'clock, we'll have a full house and we can start on time.
Oh, okay. So you're like there in the waiting room until you accept them?
I'm only letting you guys in just to check everything. Let me put some lipstick on.
Public speaking is not one of my strong points. So I'm like literally like out of my comfort zone right now, but gotta start somewhere.
You were like, yes, I'll do it. You were so gung ho.
Yeah, because I think it's important to share my experience. So that's why it's exciting.
And then we're waiting for one more. We have 54 people register, so that's great. Hi, Norma.
Hello.
How are you? Meet Madeline Garcia. She's a medical student.
Good to meet you.
Hi, Norma. Nice to meet you as well.
I told her you worked for AMC, and she said, oh, the big dogs.
I'm sure you love AMC. That takes all your money, right? Like,
oh, it's a membership organization?
No, because AMC hosts the MCAT, centralized application to medical school, all the services that are needed to get into medical school. So
yeah, and for our boards and stuff. So
I
costs
didn't
$600.
I did not realize.
We don't manage the board, but definitely like the residency application and all of that. So
yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize that AMC was like the the clearinghouse for all those exams and stuff.
Well, just the MCAT.
Oh, okay. Can you text Minerva and make sure she's okay and not in the wrong place? And
I don't have her. No, did she share her number with you? I don't have her number.
Oh, I don't know if she ever shared her number with me.
Yeah, I just had her email.
Excuse me.
Let's see.
So wait, does that cartoon in the back say Bronx behind you?
Yes, I'm from the Bronx. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I love it.
it's funny. My birthday was recently, and I guess there's a store called From the Bronx. Do you know about that, Roseanne? They do all like Bronx related like memorabilia. So my brother bought me like a sweatshirt, t-shirt. It was kind of cute.
That is cute.
Where did you grow up, Madeline?
I'm from the Bronx as well.
Oh, okay. Where?
Yeah. South Bronx. So I don't know if you know where St. Mary's Park is. It's 142nd.
Yes.
Yep.
I used to go to La
Bronx.
Tercera all the time, 149th Street.
Yeah. Mom still goes to La Tercera. She tells me that's where she goes on her walk. Excuse me.
Oh. I'm sure it's changed so much. I haven't been home, since COVID and everything. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know if I didn't notice it, like walking to La Tercera, but like now on the way there, there's just so many people. There's like a lot of homeless people, a lot of people with like mental health and drugs. It's like literally like a block long just of people filled with it. It's kind of scary to walk to, honestly.
Here she is, found her. Had to scroll down a little bit. Hi, Minerva.
Hi, Minerva. Oh, she's putting on. Hi.
How are you? Thank you for doing this. I'm so appreciative.
Oh, no, thanks for inviting me. It's good to see everyone.
Hi.
So you already know Norma. This is Madeline Garcia. She's a medical student.
Wonderful. Where are you a student?
Nice to meet you at SUNY Upstate in Syracuse.
Oh, okay. I heard it's cold up there.
Yeah, I actually have my space heater on right now. It's cold.
Oh, it's already cold? Like
it's already cold. We've gotten like 30-degree weather.
It's cold in the city too. It's cold here.
Oh, that's scary because in Texas right now it's still in the 80s. And
I wish.
I mean, I'm wearing short sleeves, right? Like
it's about, I'm gonna guess it's about 65, maybe if we're lucky 70 today, but it was cold. It was cool.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Minerva, are you leaving Texas? Uh-oh, you gotta catch me up, okay? Because I saw your email and I'm like, where's she going?
Don't blow up her spot.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Are you going to New Mexico?
No. I don't. The superstitious in me, like you could put all the science.
Just tell me when it's permanent.
But
okay.
Yeah, it's very close.
Okay.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's a good thing, but we're so close. We're so close.
All right. Well, I can't wait to hear what's next.
Thank you. Are you guys able to like hear me without like a lot of scratch and stuff, like noise in the background?
It sounds good.
Yeah,
it sounds fine.
Okay, good. And Roseanne, like, where are you based?
I'm in the Bronx.
Okay.
I'm in New York City. Mm-hmm. I work at John Jay College in Midtown Manhattan. I'm working from home right now, like the rest of, well, not the rest of the world, because the three of you are essential workers. But yeah, I'm working from home, but I'm based in New York City.
Oh, wonderful.
For a very long time. Yeah.
One of my really good friends is a pediatrician in the Bronx, actually.
Oh, where?
She used to be, well, she's in the Bronx, but I want to say she's part of the Barnabas system.
Oh, yeah. That's down in the South Bronx.
And she does a lot of initiatives around healthy eating and not having sugar-sweetened beverages for children.
I need her in my life. For adults.
So, yeah, if you ever need someone, I mean, she's been in New York, I think, like over a decade now. But
okay, thank you.
You know.
What hospital are you at?
Who, me?
Yeah.
So I'm in transition, so we could just leave I'm actually like completely not working right now. So it'd be great if we could.
So then I'm not going, I'm just going to say your names.
Yeah.
And you all can kind of do your own little bio however you see fit. How does that sound?
Well, or you could just say whenever you don't want to say, surgeon.
Yeah,
just give maybe your
track or your expertise, whatever it is you feel is appropriate. The type of medicine you practice. Yeah, and then Norma, I forgot your title.
Oh, senior director.
That's the senior director of AMC?
Well, no, you can say senior director, diversity policy and programs.
Yeah, I was like, she's in charge of AMC, but I can't say that.
Not quite, not quite.
So very quickly, before I open it up, people are starting to roll in. First, thank you. I'm really excited to do this. I've been wanting to do this for years, and I've chatted with Norma over the years, and finally I just said, how about this date? And then I think that was kind of the impetus, finally getting a date on the calendar. Today's the first day of Hispanic Heritage Month, Latinx Heritage, whatever you want to call it. And so this is my entree, Latinas in Higher Ed's entree into celebrating the month. And what a way to celebrate it than with doctors, Latina doctors. And if you haven't seen all of, well, you will be. Universe. A lot of the information that I've been putting on social media has been some of the factoids that Norma gave me. But one of the things I've been telling people is you don't know what you don't know, so let's change that. So a lot of students or young people of color, they're like, that's out of my reach. And I think I'm hoping that tonight we can show them that it is very much within their reach. So I'm going to start admitting people in. We have 15 people in the waiting room. We'll give it till 6:05, 6:06, and then we'll get started with or without whomever's here. Does that work?
Sounds good.
All right, go team.
Go team.
Good evening, everyone. We will get started shortly as more people are starting to enter the webinar. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. We're going to give folks a few more minutes to come on in, and we will get started shortly. We have a good group. Get your questions ready, everyone. I know many of you are very curious and interested in getting into med school and how to get into med school, and we've got just the right group for you. Feel free to have some conversation in the chat. When it comes time for the Q&A, you're free to unchat yourself if you want to have the one-on-one conversation with any of our panelists, or you can just simply type your question in the chat box. either way. If there are a lot of questions in the chat box and I miss it, just ask again, or like I said, unmute yourself when we come time to the Q&A. All right. It is 6:05, and I believe in starting as much on time as possible. And so with that said, I would like to welcome all of you to Latinas in Higher Education's inaugural event for this year's Latinx Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, whatever terminology you choose to use. We are here to celebrate Latinas in medical school. We have 3 amazing Latinas from different parts of the country doing different things, who are either in medical school, are doing research, or practicing doctors, that are going to share with you some of their experiences, tips and tricks, information about admissions, financial aid, pre-med opportunities, because those are the kinds of things that kind of catapult you when it comes time to apply, and then any other information about the different career tracks that exist out there. My name is Roseanne Santos, and I'm the founder of Latinas in Higher Education. It is a nonprofit organization that seeks to provide affordable professional development for people who want to advance in their careers. And I consider going to medical school the ultimate advancement in your career and in your life and in your dreams. And I hope that these women today will inspire you to go ahead and move forward with that dream of medical school. They're going to give you great information. They're going to inspire you because they inspire me. I am honored to know 2 of these women personally, and I have just been honored by meeting one of them for the first time today. And I'm very inspired by them on a regular basis. So with that, we're going to begin with simply asking, I'm going to ask Madeline to start. Madeline Garcia, she is our medical student. She's been in medical school. She's a 3rd-year medical student at Upstate Medical School in Syracuse, New York. And I'm going to let her take a minute or 2 to formally introduce herself.
Thank you, Roseanne. It's really great to be here, especially that it's like the beginning of Latino Heritage Month. And I absolutely love this time that we get to celebrate and honor Latinos. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you. So my name, as Roseanne said, is Madeline Garcia. I am a Dominicana from the Bronx, born and raised. And I'm a 3rd-year medical student at SUNY Upstate. So yeah, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm a non-traditional medical student. I graduated from Syracuse University in 2008. I worked in a law firm doing HR at a very large corporate law firm in Midtown for 7 years. There, after that, I went to the West Coast to Touro University, California. I got my master's in public health. And then now I'm here in medical school. So it's been quite a journey to get here. Yeah, it's like I said, it's been kind of like a struggle. I have had to retake my MCAT to apply to med school. I applied to med school twice, and I am here, so it is possible. I just want everyone to know that. And if you have any questions about my journey, I will be talking a little bit more about it. But yeah, I come from struggling, and I'm here by the grace of God. So.
Thank you, Madeline, and we have your back, girl. So whatever you need, you know we got you. Next, I want to introduce a valuable person in my life. Her name is Dr. Norma Paul Hunter. She is, I don't want to get this important title wrong, Senior Director of Diversity Policy and Programming at the Association of American Medical Colleges located in Washington, D.C. Norma, can you take a moment to formally introduce yourself, please?
Hi, everyone. Good to meet you. Glad that you're here. So I work with the Association of American Medical Colleges, and basically, I don't know if any of you know AAMC, we represent all the MD granting institutions across the United States. And so if you're interested in going to medical school, AAMC is the one-stop shop to learn everything you need to know about medical school. And my particular role at the AAMC is focusing on diversity. And my job is all about increasing access to opportunities to help students like yourselves, but particularly individuals who are historically underrepresented, Latino, African American, American Indian, Alaska Native, students who have less economic resources to get into medical school. So I'm excited that all of you are here this evening to learn more, and I look forward to sharing. I'm also from the Bronx, so it's interesting how we have Bronx represented here. And my parents are from Puerto Rico, so I'm New Yorican from the Bronx.
Thank you, Norma. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there was one woman on the panel that I've had the pleasure of meeting today for the first time. I hope this won't be the last. And Doctora Minerva Romero, if you can formally introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Buenas tardes, everyone. Thank you again, Roseanne, for inviting me to be a part of this panel. My name is Minerva Romero Arenas. I'm an endocrine and general surgeon. What that means is I do a lot of surgery in the neck in organs called the thyroid and parathyroid glands. I also do general surgery, which is basically anything head to toe, but a lot of times we think about it in terms of the more common surgeries like operations for hernias, for gallbladder stones, or for appendicitis, for example. So I trained also in an allopathic medical school. I first graduated high school. I then went to college. I went to college at Arizona State University, and then I went to medical school at the University of Arizona. After that, I did what we call a general surgery residency, and that I completed in Baltimore. And then after that, I trained in my subspecialty. And so that's where the endocrine surgery part comes in. I did that at a place called MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas. And now I've been out in practice for about 3 years. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you again for inviting me.
And thank you so much for being here. Se lo agradezco. So I'm going to get started with the formal questions. There aren't a lot of them, but it will get your juices flowing. It'll get the conversation going. It'll give you some more insight into medical school. And I want to start with, I'm going to start with Madeline, because you talked a little bit about struggles and that you're not what the quote unquote traditional medical student. And so the question is, what have been the biggest challenges you have faced as a medical student? You can take the perspective of being a Latina and or simply the challenges of the profession as a whole. So whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay, I have a lot to say, but you can feel free to cut me off whenever you please. I would have to say, if I summed it up into any like 1 or 2 words, it's a term that many of us are familiar with, and it's called imposter syndrome. And it's the feeling of like you don't belong, like someone's gonna find out that you got through the cracks and somehow made it into med school, even though you don't belong there. You're not enough, you're not smart enough. I recently did a little bit of research, and I saw that in 2018, there was a small percentage of Latinos who actually applied to medical school, and only about 2.5% of those Latinos were Dominicans. So we're very, very disproportionately represented in medicine. So being that there's so few of us, there's very little role models or people that we can look up to, or that we can ask questions to, that we feel comfortable asking questions to, because they're having different experiences than we are. There's no one that's a doctor in my family. I will be hopefully the first one. So there's no one in my family that I could have asked for how to make this happen. Throughout the process of getting into med school and then being in med school now, you get a lot of misleading advice as to like how you should study and how to kind of progress through med school. And it's because many of my peers, many of my colleagues, they come from very wealthy families who have had the funds, the resources, the inside scoop on how to study in medical school. But it doesn't quite work that way for Latinos and just people of color in general, because many of us don't come from those generations of doctors who know the way. So it takes us a little bit more time to get adjusted and kind of learn how to learn. And especially like I had been out of school for about 7 or 8 years. I had to reteach myself how to learn. And then I was getting like dumped tons of information on me. So I struggled a lot, to the point where at the beginning of this year in January, I didn't know if I was going to continue med school because I was basically at the verge of failing out, having to retake tests and redo certain things. I haven't been used to failing. I was like always top of my class in elementary school and high school. I've always fairly done well. So I didn't know how to fail, and I had to learn how to fail and pick myself up again. There's a line in a Cardi B song. I don't know if I should be mentioning Cardi B in this chat, but she says you get knocked down 9 and you get up 10. And that's kind of what it's been like in this whole process. So like imposter syndrome, failing, getting advice that doesn't really align with like being a Latina and being a person of color and being someone who's just so disproportionately represented in medicine, it carries like a heavy weight. Like I'm a first generation Latina, low income, low resources. And like, I not only have to succeed for myself, but I have to succeed for my family before me and after me. So that all that weight while you're trying to study is very, very challenging to say the least. But I found people along the way who have believed in me. So I think making connections and networking with people has been very important to my success to this point.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was really, really honest, and I appreciate you sharing that with the folks on the call. Minerva, what have you found to be some of your challenges? And I think I'll add to it, do you have any words of support for Madeline now while she's in school?
Definitely. And I want to just say that I guess I'll start off with the words of support, which is I hope that you can see, one, you know, I've made it, and I can tell you that I definitely was in your shoes, you know, many years ago and felt the entire weight of what you're saying. So, you know, so know that there is a larger community, a broader community of us that really want to support and help everyone that comes after us, you know, succeed. So of course, I'm happy to be a resource if you ever need anything. But just know that, you know, I made it too. I also am first generation. I also am someone whose family doesn't have a ton of resources to sort of guide me through a lot of this process. And I think that that's a real challenge, but it's definitely one that can be overcome. You know, I specifically in surgery joined a very male-dominated field. And in addition, right, in addition to all of the things and all of the sort of hoops that we have to jump through, I also face certain challenges that may come from just being a woman in a male-dominated field, that come from being what we call underrepresented minority in a largely majority field. And so all of these challenges will continue to be there. You know, a couple of things that I would say is, you know, be the change that you want to see. That's a pretty famous quote. And one of the things that, you know, that have really helped me as I went through as a medical student and in my training as a resident and fellow was to do exactly what we're doing today. And so I stayed involved with organizations that provided opportunities like this to sort of reach back out to the next generation that was coming after me. And so as a student, you know, as a medical student, I volunteered to help pre-medical students. As a resident, I volunteered to mentor medical students. And now, you know, I have the whole gamut where now as a faculty, I'm able to work with residents, with fellows, with students, both in the medical and pre-med realm. And so I really have always found that really rewarding. And I would say, find the balance, find, you know, the time to 100% dedicate to your studying and to the things that you got to do, but also find time for yourself, because it's a really long road, regardless of what your background is. Everybody, you know, will 100% say that, you know, this career is it's a marathon, and so you have to be able to sustain your energy. The other thing I would say is, grow where you're planted, and that means find the people that are going to help you thrive and do that. And, Madeline mentioned that there's no mentors necessarily. We're not always going to find a woman. We're not always going to find a Latina, or, I came from Mexico City. I'm not going to find like another, endocrine surgeon who also happens to be from my region, in Mexico. I get that. And it can be challenging, but the truth is there's plenty of people who are just as committed to your success, and they don't necessarily share your background. Most of my mentors were male. I actually really only had like one female mentor, and that was a lot later in my training. Most of my mentors have actually been not Latinos. And to be honest, I don't actually have any Latino mentors for the majority of my everything, career, education. But all of the mentors that I have had have been 100% committed to my success and to providing the best advice that they can provide. And then keep in mind that I said have mentors. That means plural mentors, because there are going to be different arenas in your professional life that you want to have certain mentors that are stronger at certain areas. And so it is important to have more than one person.
Thank you so much, Minerva. And now, Norma. I didn't mention this before, but Norma is a different kind of doctor. She has her PhD. She's a researcher, and she works for this organization that really works to increase the number of minorities, for lack of a better term, in medical and dental schools. So Norma, what does AAMC do, or the Association of American Medical Colleges do, to kind of help students like Madeline move forward, and what are the supports that exist out there through your organization so that anyone thinking about medical school knows that there's an organization out there that really has their back?
Sure. I do think it's important, just to build on what was said before, is like looking for those supports and those resources. If we think about students in very kind of pre-med stage, thinking about medicine, and every medical school has some kind of what we call pathway programs. Sometimes they're referred to as pipeline programs, to help students not only with the academic enrichment, but to find mentors, to do clinical shadowing, research opportunities. For the AMC, since we represent our medical schools, we have a range of resources on our website. And thank you for putting that information there, Roseanne, in the chat. Visit our website. We have a lot of information about how to get into medical school. What are the steps? How do you finance medical education? Because as was indicated, many students, it's a big barrier, right? Because you think, wow, I'm going to be in school for how many years, and how much does this cost? The price tag could be between $150,000 to $221,000 in terms of loans. And so the idea is that we want to give as much information as possible to help students understand what that pathway to medical school is like. So what classes do you take? How do you reach out to a mentor? How do you get a mentor? What organizations are out there to help you? How do you write a personal statement? What are the interviews are going to be like? Especially now that we're in this virtual space because of COVID-19, we have webinars about how do you conduct participate in a virtual interview and be successful. So there's a lot of information on our website. And one program in particular, especially if we have any freshman or sophomore college students, there are a lot of programs, like I mentioned, these pathway programs, but we sponsor one called the Summer Health Professions Education Program. It's funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which is an amazing foundation here in the United States focused on improving the health of the nation. And Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, RWJF, since 1989 has sponsored this program that's completely focused on increasing the representation of Latinos, African Americans, American Indians, and Alaska Natives in medicine, but also students who are economically disadvantaged. And it's a free program where students are on a campus, medical school campus, dental school for 6 weeks, and they learn everything they need to know about getting into medical school. What's important, I think, that Madeline mentioned as well, is thinking about those foundational skills Many programs focus on academic enrichment because many times, especially students who come from underserved communities, don't have access to quality science education, or they don't have a strong educational background or access, as she mentioned, to resources like how do you take a test, how do you study. So many of these programs kind of help to fill in those gaps as well. But SHPP is great. It's free. You're at a campus for 6 weeks. You learn everything you need to know about a particular health profession. So we're talking about medicine today. You get to meet with faculty, current medical students, researchers. You get to do clinical shadowing. So you get to shadow someone like Minerva, right, who's doing surgery. And you really learn about what are the key steps in place and that you have to take to get to medical school, for example. But what's most important too that was mentioned by Madeline and Minerva is understanding the whole person, the well-being, because well-being is very critical. I know we're getting there's more awareness now on mental health, but the reality is that as people of color, minorities, Latinas in particular, we have unique experiences. So Madeline talked about having this sense of imposter syndrome. Also thinking about what racism you may experience, microaggressions, sexism. How do you deal with all of these as you go along the pathway to medical school or another health profession? So many programs address these issues as well, giving you those strategies to be successful.
Thank you so much for that, Norma. That's excellent information. Can you repeat the name of the summer program in case folks didn't get it, and I can try to type it in the chat box?
Sure. So the website is shpep.org. It's the Summer Health Professions Education Program. I can type it in there for everybody. Yep, you got it.
Yeah, thank you. Madeline, speaking of which, can you talk a little bit about the admission and financial aid experience for our audience?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. So I took the older MCAT. I know that there's a newer MCAT that came out. So I was part of one of the last people to take the older MCAT. So I'm not sure of the newer one, like I just said. But it's very, very tedious process applying to like many different schools. I did go through 2 application cycles because I didn't get in the first cycle. And you're basically getting a huge resume together, like, making sure that you have letters of recommendation and your transcripts, and also having in your application any like research or volunteer work that you have done. And yeah, so basically all of these things have to be compiled into this like one big application, and then you send it out to several schools. I mean, at the time that I applied, it was like you had to apply to maybe 15, 20, 25, 30 programs just to maybe get into one. So it's very time consuming. I did it while I was working full time as well. So, and it's almost like its own little part-time job trying to get this application process together. And then there are schools that will offer you an interview, and you go ahead and you go to the schools to interview. I also did non-traditional interviewing because it's no longer, a lot of programs no longer do one-to-one. They do what's called an MMI, which is like mini interviews. And I like that platform better because I feel like you get like almost 8 or 9 different chances to talk to different people as opposed to like the one and done. But some people like the traditional, but I think the MMI was better in my point of view. And then after all of that, it's like the waiting period, waiting to see if you get accepted into any program. And then once you do, it's onboarding is pretty fun. I mean, I don't know how it went now in the time of the COVID with like virtual onboarding at the schools, but yeah, it's just a whole bunch of orientation stuff. And then with financial aid, it's like almost like going to college. You get a financial aid package, and then you can talk to the financial aid office and kind of tell them what your needs are. I know like my school is pretty receptive. I mean, there's always going to be loans. Like you can find ways to kind of try to finance med school, but I've been very blessed with like my financial aid office. There's always been someone I can talk to there if like I'm having some difficulty. But yeah, that was my experience with admissions and financial aid.
Thank you. Minerva, can you talk a little bit about the different career tracks? You talked about being an endocrinologist, and I know you could talk for days, but how does someone start to think about what they want to be within the medical field? Is that something they have to think about now before they get in, or do they think about it while they're doing it? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think everyone thinks that they come into medical school and that they're set on that career path. And I oftentimes joke with students to say, let me pull out your personal statement that you submitted because you said you're going to be, whatever, a pediatrician, or you're going to be the person to cure diabetes. Truthfully, we don't hold anyone accountable to that. We know that so much of medical school really is meant to help you get exposure to different fields. And so that really should help drive your development, and it should really help drive that decision-making process to where do I fit best as a physician? Where am I going to be the best physician that I can be? So I can tell you that I never in my life imagined being a surgeon, and it was so far from like the realm of possibilities of what I was going to do with my career. But thankfully, from the minute I decided, it's a decision that I've never looked back on. So I say that just because it's really important to keep an open mind so that you can make the most out of that medical student experience. And the way I always looked at it was, okay, well, if I decide to be a pediatrician, I want to like be all in this. But if I decide not to be a pediatrician, then this might be the last time I really get an opportunity to learn about it. And so that really sort of helped me, I think, maximize my experience when I was rotating on the different services. There's a wide range, like you can be so specialized, right? We joke around saying I can be, the cardiologist that only treats the right side of the heart, and then I'll have a colleague who only consults on the left side of the heart. But the truth is you can get really specialized. And so we kind of tend to think about, do we want to be a procedure-based physician or a not procedure-based physician? And so am I someone who wants to be in primary care? Or am I somebody who wants to be in the hospital? Am I somebody who wants to be in the operating room? Believe it or not, there are actually physicians who sometimes will never see patients. So if you're a radiologist or the physician who reads X-ray studies and CT scan and imaging studies, there's plenty of physicians like that who never actually interact with patients. There's pathologists, which are the physicians who look at, for example, an organ that was taken out during surgery, or something that was sampled in a procedure like a biopsy. And they also oftentimes never interact with patients. So there's such a wide range. What I generally say is just sort of learn more about it. Thankfully, now that everything is digital, there's resources that have been built where, for example, the American College of Surgeons has a wide library of different descriptions of career choices in surgery. And I know that those exist from other professional societies as well. And so educate yourself about the different things that you can, that you could be. Get through your medical school application process, and then be ready to jump through the next hoop, right? Which is going to be get ready to shine in your medical student rotations. And then there'll be a next hoop, which is get, through the residency application cycle.
I'm going to keep you there. I want to ask you another question. I know that Madeline has talked about some of the struggles. It's, she's a student. Students are always struggling. That's just like part of being a student. But now that you have been in the profession, what are some of the biggest rewards?
So, I think having having the ability to see a patient be better. I mean, for me, it's really immediate. We always talk about surgeons having that immediate reward, which is, hey, I mean, I can have a patient who had appendicitis and they felt miserable, and within the span, of an hour, when we did the procedure, and now they're awake again in the recovery area and they're smiling. And it's such a wonderful feeling to know, like, I help that person feel better, to know that, potentially, like, you saved someone's life. And so I always say, patients' hugs are like the best thing. Unfortunately, right now in COVID, we can't get patient hugs, but, smiles will also do the trick.
Thank you for sharing that. Madeline, can you talk a little bit about student life? Like, I know we spoke very briefly and you said that you had been involved in an organization, you had a leadership role in that organization. Can you just talk really briefly about what that looks like in something so intense like medical school?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, especially it's very challenging for me because I love being involved in everything, but in med school, you just don't have quite that time. So you have to pick and choose what you decide to be involved in. So I currently am involved in the Latino Medical Student Association. And as a second year medical student, I served as the president of the chapter. And then thereafter, I was part of the regional board. And now I serve as the Deputy Chief Development Officer of the National LMSA Board, which has been very rewarding in itself because it allows me to network with other Latino medical students, like in the region and around the country. But it is a challenge. Like, it has to be something that you're passionate about, something that you want to take time out to do, because it looks very different to be part of an organization as like a college student, as a high school student, and in medical school, because there's very limited programming that can be done and very limited as to the times that it can be done. But if it's important to you, like, you kind of tend to make time for it. Like, I remember myself and another student, we did like a walkout for DACA students when there was, it had come up in the news. And so we did programming for that, or we'll do programming for like a salsa night or something like that to expose our classmates to, our culture. But yeah, it can be done, but it's very like weird in med school because you have to pick like that one or two. And then I was also part of like a pediatrics interest group and a OB-GYN interest group, but there aren't really like group body meetings. It's just like an event here and there, and you attend and you get to like meet physicians in that area, but it's not something you spend a lot of time on.
Do you have a job, or is this like a full-time job?
This is a full-time job.
Okay. I know that becomes a question for folks who are in underrepresented communities. Can we work? And I hear this a lot also. I've done panels like this for law school. Can they work? And the answer is usually no. So I think it's important for the audience to know that you just don't have time to do a retail job or some administrative job. Minerva.
I'm going to chime in because my answer 100%, I would say, is always no, but there's always an exception. And I do know of medical students who had previous clinical work, and I've seen it in a wide range of things. So I've seen students who were scribes, who were nurses, who were maybe physician's assistants or even nurse practitioners. And sometimes what they will do is what we call moonlighting. And so basically they'll pick up like one shift or two shifts per month. It's not a ton of work. So it's not like having even a part-time job, but it's just sort of knowing that you might have a day or two throughout the month that you could potentially pick up an extra shift. And so I know those people who have been able to make it make that work and not entirely lose income, but even then that's not making up an entire salary, and it's definitely not paying for the entirety of the cost of tuition and room and board.
Thank you for that input. Does anyone have questions yet? I don't see anything in the chat. I can keep going, but I want to give those of you in the audience a chance to ask. Norma, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to build on what was just stated in terms of your questions, Roseanne, about the admissions process and then also financial aid. I think it's important for students to be aware of the concept holistic admissions, because oftentimes with the admissions process, many students are very worried about the MCAT, so it's the medical college's admissions test, which is the exam that Madeline talked about taking. And there's a lot of concern about, well, if I didn't get a high enough MCAT score, I'm not going to get into medical school. And I think it's very important for students to understand, and advisors and family members, that the test is important, but it's not the end all be all. And holistic admissions is really an approach that medical schools take to look at the whole applicant. So it's not just the MCAT score, it's the GPA, the science GPA, also looking at the person's experiences, their volunteer, their leadership in their community, if they have research background. So we're looking at the whole student and what they bring to the table. And oftentimes students don't have to major like in a science in order to go into medical school. You definitely have to take your prerequisite courses, but you don't have to major in like biology or chemistry. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, because there are a lot of myths about what you need to get into medical school. And also too, in terms of affordability, it is expensive, but I think it's important for students to know that there are resources out there. There aren't as many scholarships, but there are some organizations like National Medical Fellowship. There also is a fee assistance program through the Association of American Medical Colleges. It's called FAP, Fee Assistance Program, and it's on our website. So before you even apply for the MCAT, you can actually apply for a fee assistance program that will waive your MCAT fees, and it'll also waive your application fees to medical school. So it's important to know the resources that are out there as well. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very important. There's a question in the chat for you, Madeline, from Yaneri Abreu. What did you do differently on your second application cycle that got you accepted?
Yes, thanks for that question, Yanity. So basically, I had to retake my MCAT 1 to try to get a higher score, but I also didn't have the highest score. So I agree with what Norma said, like it was more of my like holistic application. But what I did at that point was, because I didn't have a strong MCAT score, and as I mentioned, I was non-traditional, I had been out of school for a few years, I went back to I went to a Hunter, to one of the city colleges in New York City, and I took some additional courses that were like advanced courses in science, so that my grades in those courses would have showed that I still was interested and I could still perform well in a higher level science class. But with that said, with the holistic process, like I was also still volunteering at hospitals. I was very much involved in working with high school students, with Latinas who wanted to kind of look at higher ed opportunities. So I was showing med school that I was interested and I was invested in my community. And I think that that's what made me stand out, that even though I took a long time, to get back into applying to med school, I took some higher level courses and I demonstrated my interest in helping out my community.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Well, I'll wait for her to say yes or no in the chat. In the meantime, there's a question from Maria Parrilla. I guess whoever feels they can answer this. How do you cover living expenses without being able to work?
So if you, unless you have a very generous parent or family member who is willing to cover your tuition, most of us take out what we call student loans. There is a huge program that is a federal program that offers student loans, and they are built and a part of medical school admissions process. And so there's a whole financial aid office that will work with you, and they'll go through the same documents that you submit when you do the, FAFSA in college. You do a very similar process in medical school. There's also scholarships. And of course, the scholarships can be, you know, small scholarships to like help cover books, other scholarships that may specifically help with courses or specific, for example, there are scholarships to attend conferences. And then separately from all of this, there's also now a growing trend with medical schools offering free tuition to the entire medical school class. There's not, obviously not all the schools are doing this, but some of the privately owned schools where their alumni have donated money back to the school to be able to provide this. Some schools are doing that. So you definitely want to look into those programs if you think that taking out loans can range from like 150 to, I've seen as much as like $500,000. And yes, that's probably enough to buy like a house. But the trade-off for that is that when you do get out, so one, when you do finish medical school and you enter residency training, then you are getting paid. And so that's when you're able to start paying those loans back. And also when you do become an attending, then you get like a pretty big bump in your salary. And so those are the reasons why we sort of put off our ability to earn money during medical school.
Thank you for sharing that. That's, I think, again, you don't know what you don't know. And so these are things that I think is really important for people to understand as they think about taking this on. You hear $500,000 and you're like, well, I guess my career is my mortgage. But there's a lot of return on investment in the medical field. So they can be anyway. There's some really good questions coming in. The next one is, does a post-bac improve your chance of admissions to medical school if your GPA is low? And that's from Laura Diaz Casos. Norma?
Hi, Laura. Maybe I'll take that one because I know there's a lot of research about post-baccalaureate programs, and sometimes it just depends on the program. It depends on what kind of post-bac you're looking for. Are you looking for, some people might be career changers and never have had a background in science, so they do a post-baccalaureate program. Some actually do it to enhance their academic record, as you said, and that could be very helpful. Also, too, I think I would take some caution in considering post-baccalaureate programs because sometimes you don't get a degree as a result of the program. Sometimes it's probably better to do a master's degree in another area. So you get the master's degree and you show that you're able to be successful at the graduate level, as Madeline mentioned, in higher level science courses. Also, sometimes what happens, students might apply to medical school. They don't get accepted to a school, but the school offers them an opportunity to do a post-baccalaureate program. And if they're successful, then it's a conditional acceptance to their medical school. So there are many different types of post-baccalaureate programs, but the research does show that post-baccalaureate programs, again, depending on the type, do help individuals get to medical school because it's really about giving them the academic preparation, in some cases helping them prepare for the MCAT. So it just depends on the type of post-bac program you're looking into. And AAMC actually, if you go to their website, we have a post-bac database. So you can see the different post-bac programs across the United States.
Thank you. So AAMC is this one-stop shop. So you guys just have to go and really look at that website. We have another question from Paola Ibarra. A little bit more personal question. How did you manage personal relationships in medical school and or having children?
I can answer this really quickly, just on my experience. So having like any relationships, family, friends, like significant others is very, very challenging in med school because med school basically like usurps all your time. So you have to kind of be honest with yourself and your loved ones and know that many sacrifices will need to be made, and there will be relationships that will suffer. And I think part of it is just like letting people know what's going on. I know that's something that I had a challenge with. Like I kind of made myself out to be like this strong woman who can handle it all. And then I wasn't letting, you know, the people that I love the most know that I just wouldn't be able to give them that sort of time. So it is a challenge, but it is doable. I've seen other people be successful at it. That's just my personal experience. And it was just something that I had to just tell my family and friends about and let them know, you know, why my relationship wasn't like a 50-50 thing. It was more of like a 20-80 80 thing. But yeah, I actually wrote about an essay about my, like, you know, I touched on my relationships, but about my struggles in med school. Like, I'm going to link it in the chat so people can read it if they wanted to as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next.
I want to just chime in. I don't have children, so I'm not going to speak from personal experience, but I will share that I have had colleagues throughout the entire process who have kids. So it's doable. And so I just want to throw that out there because it's doable for women. It's definitely more doable for the men, but it's doable during medical school. It's doable during residency, and it's doable even for surgeons. Like Madeline said, it's just really important to be honest with yourself about whatever your goals are, personal and professional goals. And I think it's important to make that distinction because they may not always lead to the same decisions, but it's important to sort of think about that and have that insight and then to be honest with your friends and family.
Thank you. Thank you. Alejandra Leon wants to know how important community service is and how we can find medical related community service opportunities.
I can start. You know, I think definitely not only with the AMC, we have the post-bac database, as I mentioned, but we do have a database of different opportunities. I think, you know, sometimes it could be hard to find medical related community service because of, you know, you have issues like HIPAA regulations, or sometimes some places will not accept students. And now in this era of COVID-19, it's even harder to be involved in patient care settings. So I would say, you know, it's really about what you're most passionate about. You don't want to do it just to kind of beef up your application. You want to do something that really is important to you as an individual and think about how you want to serve your community. At the end of the day, if you get exposure to a healthcare setting, that's great. But if you don't, that's all right. I think what's most important is that you're showing leadership, you're showing commitment to a cause, and you're able to then articulate why that's important for you in your career and your interest.
Thank you. Anyone else want to share? Okay, we have some more questions in the chat. Would you say it's necessary to take a gap year between college and med school? And that's from Maria Parrilla.
I think it's important to not think about things in absolutes, right? And so every applicant is going to be different. And so, you know, this is where it's really important to find a good mentor to help you think through the processes. I actually, you know, I'll link this a little bit back to the question earlier about post-bac programs. And Norma mentioned, you know, that it kind of depends on the program because some programs have really good track records and others don't. And so it's really important to find someone who can look at your entire story, right? We always say that your personal statement has to tell a story, and that story has to be told within the context of your MCAT, your GPA, your background, and all of the other pieces that come together to make your application for medical school. So finding a mentor that can really look at all of that and tell you, this is where you need to beef up your application to be a more competitive applicant. I actually recently had that exact question from a student who was considering doing a post-bac program. And as you know, all of the classes have now switched to a virtual format. So the student was asking, should I do a post-bac program in the virtual setting and, you know, and spend my money on tuition? And is this going to help me be a more competitive applicant? Now, I've been working with the student for a few years now, and I sort of know a little bit about their background. And I just thought, you know, I'm not sure if if taking classes online is going to have the impact that you want it to have, for example, on your GPA, because there are certain cutoffs where once you graduate, for example, that GPA counts different than any classes you take in postbac. You know, and then there's like a science GPA that's calculated. And so I just thought, I'm not sure if that's where you need to spend your time. You may be able to better define other goals, like maybe finding a research project, or maybe finding a way that you can stay involved in a clinical setting. And actually, after we had that conversation, the student was able to go back to the postbac program, and they provided basically the same feedback, which is great, because it kind of helps reinforce that that, you know, that they're not far off of whatever they're thinking, and so that student was able to sort of reframe their goals for this year.
Wonderful, thank you. The mentorship is important at all stages of life. Even, I mean, I have mentors. I know that the women on this call, the panelists, have mentors. So think about who are going to be your mentors throughout your lifetime and your careers. Some people go through different transitions. So Norma, you had something more to add?
Well, I was just going to say, you know, the same point, like a gap year for what purpose, right? Like, what are you trying to accomplish during that gap year? It's not necessary you can apply to medical school right out of undergrad. The one thing I also want to emphasize is, you know, Madeline talked about leadership at LMSA. I know that Menenda was also involved in LMSA. It's a great organization, the Latino Medical Student Association, but they also have opportunities for students that are in college that want to be involved in LMSA. So I would encourage any of you who are interested in medicine, depending on where you are, to look at their website and check out what opportunities there are to be involved with an organization like LMSA.
Thank you. We have 2 more questions, and then I'm going to have to ask the panelists for their final remarks. The second to last question comes from Marlene Gualpa. Can I still apply for medical school even though I only have my GED? Or what are the requirements?
So you definitely need to have your college prerequisites, so, you know, completed in all the key areas in science before you apply for medical school.
Does that mean that someone has to have a bachelor's degree before applying when you say your key college requirements?
Technically, no.
Right.
But you would be hard pressed. Like, you would have to be quite the prodigy to, you know, in the current pool of applicants, I would say we're moving away from people applying without a bachelor's degree. Most candidates do have a bachelor's, and actually a significant number. Norma, you probably can speak to the numbers a little bit better. How many people actually have master's programs now because they either actually pursued that degree for a particular reason, or because they obtained them as part of a postbac program.
Okay. All right. So I lied. There's 2 more questions, and I'll ask them both in case you can answer at the same time, both. Paula Ibarra wants to know, how does the match program work? And Jasmine Castillo wants to know, how do we find resources as gap year students? I feel like a lot of summer programs, opportunities, or resources in general are geared towards undergrads. So the first one is, again, how does the match program work?
So I do think when you go on a gap year, it's definitely a time when you can feel disconnected because you're no longer part of the undergrad campus and you're not quite yet part of the medical school campus. But again, all of the medical schools have, for example, an office that is really geared towards outreach to undergraduates. A lot of the medical schools have an office that's specifically designated to provide outreach to underrepresented groups. And so those have a wide variety of names. They can be the diversity and inclusion office. in my time, they were just called the Office of like Minority Affairs. I know that, for example, at Stanford, there's what they call this like a center of excellence, right? Because they're targeting all groups. And so I would say look particularly at the resources that are in your local area, because obviously it's easier to stay involved in something around year round rather than something that's like across the country. There's also other organizations. Norma already mentioned, Madeline already mentioned the Latino Medical Student Association. There is an organization called Alliance and Mentorship, which is heavily based in California, but also provides resources and programming and opportunities throughout the country. And then just all of the different programs. I mean, you guys are super savvy about technology and computer, right? Because you totally grew up with it. And so, you know, this is a great opportunity to sort of Google things and Google them along like the things that you're actually interested in. You know, so a lot of students say, oh, I don't want to do, I hate research. I can't think of doing research, right? But do you know like that there's a ton of different research, and like I do a lot of research that doesn't require me to spend any time in a lab, but it's still considered research, right? And so learning about the different opportunities, and then just email people, just cold email people and say, hi, you know, my name is Minerva and I'm interested in becoming a doctor. Like, is there any way that I can work with you on this? You know, I saw on this website that you do this, like, can you tell me about it? I would say don't give up. You know, a lot of times we get hundreds of emails, but there's no reason, you know, that you can't just go and be a go-getter and find, you'll be surprised how many people are really willing to open that door for you.
I'll just add to what Minerva just mentioned. You know, you can, during a gap year, it is challenging when a lot of these programs, I do agree, are focused on undergrad students. But you can look at the National Institutes of Health. They often have internships and research opportunities. And as Minerva mentioned, you might not think that you're interested in research, but it is a good opportunity, because if you think about it, being a physician, all of what you're going to do is primarily based on research and evidence. So it's good to be a consumer of research and learn what the research process is about. So that's a good gap year activity. Also, as she indicated, maybe looking within your local community, checking out your hospitals, your local hospitals as well. They might have volunteer programs, or just thinking about trying to find some employment that's related to, you know, some kind of community engagement, whatever you're passionate about. I think the gap year is all about, you know, gap year for what? So why did you take that time off? What are you going to do with that time that could really help you get closer to your career goals? That's really how you should think about it.
Does anyone have any insights into the match program? I'm not sure what that is. No.
Yeah, the match program occurs once you're getting ready to graduate medical school. And so Madeline will be probably all kinds of excited about the match soon. But the match program, it's actually a Nobel Prize winning algorithm or a math formula. It's a program that was actually developed for economics. And it's so good that it won a Nobel Prize, right? So it's a program that essentially is meant to help students match with a training program that will help them get that training for what we call residency, or the training process to learn how to be the kind of doctor you want to be. And it basically pairs the student at the program that wants that student the most. And it's a complex formula, but it works every year. And essentially, it's meant to optimize the odds for everyone.
I was muted. Before we close, I want to give each of our panelists an opportunity to give some final words of wisdom, I'm leaving it up to them what they want to say. I don't want to turn it into a question. So let's start with Madeline, our med student.
So far, what I've learned that it's like a privilege to see patients and to be allowed to like even treat patients. Like every life is sacred. What I would say that I have learned in my journey is to have faith. Like having a relationship with God or your higher power is a must for me. I feel like I always have to go back to that base. I've had to be transparent about my journey and the transformation that has happened throughout it, and to share that journey with others, to encourage and motivate others as well. And lastly, I would say to shut off the desire to be perfect. I think med school tends to attract type A personalities where we expect perfection from ourselves, and people around us expect perfection from us as well. So I think med school has been very humbling and a good way to a great opportunity, I should say, to learn about myself and to shut off what I thought would be like the perfect life or the perfect student life and all those things. So yeah, have faith, be transparent, transform and be okay with it, and shed the desire to be perfect.
We need that in all of our careers and lives, not just med school, trust me. Norma, would you like to give us some words of wisdom?
Sure. I say always try something once. You just never know what experience you're going to have. I know that in my own journey, I told myself, oh, I shouldn't do that because I'm not going to fit in. Oh, I don't, have the money to go to X school, or I don't have this, so I'm not going to try that. And I would say, take all those doubts off the table and just give it a try. You just never know what you're going to get. And I think especially for the Latino community, Latinas in particular, we don't like to ask for anything. And I've learned it never hurts to ask. Never, ever. There's plenty of people that they'll ask for things and they get it. You're like, how did you get it? They're like, I just asked. So definitely don't be afraid to ask for things. Don't be afraid to call a school and be like, I'm interested. What kind of money or scholarships do you have? What opportunities do you have? I think it's just, as Minerva said earlier, it's just an email. It's just a phone call. All you can hear is no. And sometimes you might hear no. That's okay. Ask again. Ask somebody else. So always ask for what you want.
I like that. Thank you. Minerva?
Yeah, so first of all, it's really hard to follow what was just said, but I think you guys are right on the money. So definitely take note of what both Madeline and Norma just said. And right along the lines of that, I'll say the same thing, which is I didn't get to where I am without asking for help. I definitely had to overcome all of the things that you've heard about, in terms of, any doubts about where I'm at, any doubts about whether I belong here, but also without, a lot of hard work. And ultimately, I think that's a really important piece of it, which is being able to commit to this and being able to put in a lot of hard work, knowing that came with a ton of sacrifices, not just my sacrifices, but the sacrifices of everyone around me. And that includes my family, that includes my friends, and that's a really important piece, because without their support, like Madeline said, whenever I wasn't able to give my usual 120% and I could only give a fraction of that, and they're able to, still invite me to the birthday party, they were able to still, put up the iPad when I could only do Christmas through FaceTime. And they were happy to just have me be a part of it. And so I think those are all really important aspects. I'm always guilty of making myself available to anyone that wants to get any guidance or mentoring. And so Roseanne, you have my contact information, and I'm happy to sort of serve as a resource for any of the people that have joined us on the call today. I do really well in answering emails within, usually 3 to 4 days. But if I, for some reason, miss your email, just email again. And don't be afraid to reach out. All of us, I mean, there's a really broad community, and I'm sure that beyond the 4 people that are on the call today trying to help you guys meet your goals, I know a whole army of Latinas in medicine that would love to help support you as well.
Thank you so much for that. I do send out a thank you follow-up email within 24 hours of the event, and I will include social media links of the ladies of whatever it is they're willing to share, and any emails that they tell me that they give me permission to share. So I will send that to everyone who dialed into the call and who is here tonight, and you can follow them, you can email with follow-ups, etc. Oh, I see some folks have put it in the chat, so thank you so much for that. On that note, unfortunately, ya son las 7:10. It's 7:10, and I know that folks have things to do, babies to feed, work to finish, and I just really want to sincerely thank the women on this panel for trusting me with their information and with the format and the platform and trusting the space. And I want to thank all of you who called in. Norma and AAMC have a lot of important information about how important it is to diversify the medical field. I mean, it's crucial to the point of sometimes our people won't get the help they need because they won't go to anybody but us. So if you are even remotely interested, study the AAMC website. We did not have time to talk about this, but if you or someone you know is interested in dental school, AAMC has a lot of information about that on their website. From what Norma has told me, it is a very different process. So you definitely want to make sure that if you do have some interest in that as well, or if you're just exploring the medical field in general, there are several types of medicine out there. And I know that AAMC does a wonderful job on their website of kind of sharing and outlining and explaining and telling you what those pre-med opportunities are. So with that said, I want to thank everyone. Please stay safe. Thank you for your interest. Please follow me at Higher Ed Latinas, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. That's where I post everything. And I'm Roseanne Santos on LinkedIn for future events of this kind. And thank you so much. Cuídense and have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the information. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Good night.